You're listening to the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse at bellydancegeek.com.
Hi, everybody. It's Nadira, and welcome to episode 11 of the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse. The Clubhouse is a place where dancers can get all that information that's hard to get in classes and on DVDs. There are a lot of resources out there if you want to learn about the what, so things like moves and combinations and choreography. But it's a lot harder to get information on the why, things like music and culture, and also on the how, stagecraft, stage dynamics, professionalism. And so that's what the Clubhouse is for. So every month I'm going to interview a different guest expert on a different topic, and we'll always have time for questions and answers so you can geek out too. So if you think that knowledge and creativity go together like chocolate and peanut butter, you are in the right place. So my guest today is Princess Farhana. And let me tell you a little bit about her. The internationally acclaimed princess has been performing, teaching, and writing about belly dance since 1990. Trained in the Egyptian style, she's also well known as a theatrical and fusion performer, creating exquisite tableaux from the 1920s to 1970s. She's acted and danced in many fine films and music videos, and on television shows and in documentaries on Oriental dance. With 15 instructional DVDs out, her latest is Strike a Pose, How to Make the Camera Love You, with tips and tricks for creating gorgeous dance promotional photos. Her forthcoming belly dance handbook is a lifestyle reference guide for dancers, and that will be out in November of 2013. Now, tonight's call is going to be a three-parter. First, the princess is going to talk about posing for the camera. Then she's going to do some live posing critiques using photos that were submitted by Clubhouse listeners. And then we're going to have a Q&A section so you can ask Her Highness your own questions. And be sure to stick around to the end because the princess is going to be giving away 2 copies of her DVD Strike a Pose. But you do still have to be on the call at the end when we do the drawing in order to win. And don't worry about how you're connected. As long as you're on phone, Skype, or the webcast, you're eligible. Now, when we get to the photo critique section, we are going to be using some visuals, and you may want to see the pictures that the princess is critiquing. So if you're on the webcast, you should be seeing slides right now, so you're all set. If you're on the phone or Skype, you may want to also connect to the webcast so you can see those slides. The webcast URL is instantteleSeminar.com/?event ID equals 448-14009. If you're on the Clubhouse list, you should have gotten an email with a link to that. If that's too much, don't worry about it. You can also download a PDF handout, which will show you the same slides that we're showing on the webcast. If you're listening live, you can go to bellydancegeek.com/clubhouse, and right there on the page, there should be a big gray download arrow. If you're listening to the recording later, that arrow won't be there. So you'll have to go back to the episode page for Princess Farhana's call at bellydancegeek.com. So now that we have all that out of the way, let's jump right in. So, Princess, thank you so much for coming.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, I'm so glad that we're talking about this topic today because I actually met you at the MECTA Professional Dance Conference and Retreat. And you gave a very similar class as a live workshop. And that was the only one that I didn't get to go to because it conflicted with the class that I was teaching.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I'm so excited to ask you all this stuff. So now, anybody who's seen your photos knows that you are an expert on posing. There's just something about them that's so alive and so special. And, you know, I'm wondering, how did you learn how to pose?
Okay, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I was self-taught. And the way that I learned was that my mother taught theater when I was growing up, and she had a huge library of theatrical books, including a lot of books about old Hollywood photographs and just, you know, old movie productions, vintage movies and stuff. And I used to stare at those books nonstop because I thought the photographs were so unbelievably gorgeous. And you know, that was also, I'm an old lady. You know, I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s. So I could see a lot of those movies on TV because it was way before there was cable, and it just something about those old pictures really spoke to me. So when I started getting into my teens, I was still obsessed with these pictures, only then I would, like, take the book into the bathroom with me, stand on top of the toilet, and try to recreate the poses in the medicine chest mirror. And sometimes I would get them perfect, and sometimes I wouldn't get them so well, and not just because I was standing on the toilet, but I realized some of it had to do with my body was different, or my face and bone structure was different than the women whose poses I was trying to recreate, not to mention, the fact that there was no lighting in the bathroom, and I didn't have on a gorgeous evening gown. I was sitting there, wearing my Carter's undies and, like, a T-shirt. But when I got a little bit older and moved out to Los Angeles, there was photo booths all over Hollywood Boulevard. It hadn't, like, basically changed since the 50s. So I used to go into the photo booths and take glamour shots of myself, which I guess was, like, sort of the 70s, equivalent of selfies. And I didn't think I was ever going to do anything with them because, those days were so long gone and bygone and everything was so glamorous. It was never going to be like that again. That's what I thought, because remember, we were living in the post-hippie, pre-Farrah Fawcett kind of age, and there was no pinups, there was no glamorous, beautiful Mata Hari pictures or Greta Garbo playing Mata Hari, so I just didn't think it was ever going to happen. So I thought it was just for fun until I started belly dancing. And then I was like, wow, I could do anything I wanted. I'm wearing these cool old costumes, beautiful, like, costumes that look like they could come from, like, the 30s and the 40s. So I just started going crazy with that, and it just grew and grew and grew. All of a sudden life was as glamorous as I thought it was never going to be. So that's how I learned. It was years of study that I didn't consider study at the time. I just thought it was like a bizarre hobby.
Excellent. And, how is posing for the camera different from the poses that we do on stage?
The main difference is that when you're in front of the camera, you're one-dimensional. It's like a flat image. And when you're on stage, you're there in real life, in person, in 3 dimensions, and you're moving. So people are moved by seeing you, from your actual movement, from your dancing, from the fringe swaying around on your outfit, from the way your hair is, like, sort of bouncing around, from the way your veil's flying, and from your own personality and your unique, like, sort of inner beauty that comes out on stage. And in a camera, a camera only sees one thing. It sees planes and angles. So it's a completely different animal. When you pose on stage, it's like almost a suspenseful moment. But when you're posing in front of a camera, it's a moment suspended in time. So it's you have to make it all about, like, the colors, the angles, and the planes of your face or your face and your body. It's completely different. You have to like, kind of see the camera like your lover. I know that sounds really corny, but you have to look into the camera as though you're, like, looking into the eyes of your soulmate.
I like that idea. Now, what do dancers need to know about how to compose a photo?
Well, there's a lot of variables there. The first thing that I think is if you're doing dance photos, and that photos are aimed for the general public, you really want to make sure that your photo says belly dance, because there's a lot of things going on in the world of belly dance today that the general public just won't understand, like gothic belly dance or steampunk or certain kinds of tribal or fusion. Like, the general public wouldn't identify that as a belly dancer necessarily. Like, they're sitting there going, this girl's wearing a top hat. She looks like she's in the circus. I thought belly dancers were supposed to look like that one in the James Bond movie. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of, so if you're doing a promotional photo, you should try to have it be as much belly dancey to the eyes of the general public as you can. And if you're doing a photo that's going to be used within the belly dance community or the belly dance world at large, then you can, like, go crazy and rock on your subgenre of belly dance. I'm not saying that everyone has to be in a sparkly or coined costume with a lot of veils, but some things like even a one-piece dress can sometimes be confusing to the general public because that's not their stereotype of what belly dancing is, you know. So you have to determine your need.
Gotcha. So if you're trying to signal belly dance to the general public, are there any specific features or hints that you could give them that you're a belly dancer?
Well, I usually, if I'm using it on like on a postcard or a small business card as opposed to a website, I usually like a 3/4 shot, like kind of from the hip up, so they can get a look at your body and your costume, because that'll help them out. And then little things like finger symbols and veils always help. Like all those old 70s album covers, like you knew it was a belly dancer and you still know it was a belly dancer even if the album is 40 years old, you know? Like, so those kind of things. Some people put a headshot on their business card and you can't really tell from the headshot, and, you know, unless there's like a veil going around it or some really exotic eyes. You can't really, it could be a headshot for almost anybody, or, you know, like a secretary or a veterinarian with a lot of makeup on. But I also don't think it's that good to put a full body shot on a business card because the image is so tiny you almost would have to use a magnifying glass. So if you have a good like hip from the hip upwards shot, you can also feature in like a veil or like, you know, like the top and the bottom of a costume or your hands with finger symbols, you know. And also the prettier your card is, or just, you know, the more arresting the image, the more likely people are to keep it and show it to others or ask you for a few so they can, hey, I met a belly dancer, you know, they can hand it out. Because we think it's normal to be a belly dancer, but they don't.
I think we forget that the longer you're in the scene, the more normal all this stuff seems.
Oh, it's totally true. I met a friend of mine on the island of Oahu a couple of months ago. He just happened to be there, and I've known him, you know, for years. And I invited him to my show, and like after like the third or fourth performer, he turned to me and he went, "Oh my God, there's so many beautiful women here." And I looked around and I was like, "Oh, I guess there is," you know. It just seemed normal to me.
Excellent. Now you talked about how to, you know, signal to the public that you're a belly dancer. Do you have any tips on photos where your audience are other dancers? I know this is kind of a little bit of there's a little bit of a tangent, but is there anything you can put in your photo to signal to other dancers, hey, I'm an expert, or this is what I'm about?
Well, you would want to highlight your style of dancing, you know, like whether it was Bollywood or folkloric or modern Egyptian. I mean, it's kind of like when you see someone and they're wearing like a black T-shirt and black jeans and sneakers or something, you're like, oh, that person's like minimalist and a little bit edgy or punky. And then you see someone else that's going for the Jersey Shore look, or somebody else that's like wearing a business suit, you know, like it kind of just says your genre. It's kind of like an instant identification. But when you're taking or using photos for within the belly dancing world, you kind of want to have a photo that's a little bit more unusual than you would for the general public. At least that's just my opinion. That's like for my this is going to sound crazy and extravagant, but printing is so cheap nowadays that I have like probably like 6 or 7 different sets of postcards, and I bring them to different events because I teach at some that are tribal, some that are cabaret, some that are fusion, you know, so I just have different ones, and then I have some cards that are also like of my vintage looks. Like I have a 20s looking card and one that looks like a 60s album cover. You know, and a few years ago, printing was not digital the way it is now, so getting any kind of business cards was done through typeset, and it was really expensive, and, you know, it was astronomical, and now it's gotten so cheap that if you get a few pictures, you have, you know, cheaper outlets, or less expensive outlets, I should say, to make a few. So, you know, you could tailor it by the type of belly dancing you do or by the audience you're going for. Like, obviously, someone that does, like, a lot of Ren fairs is going to look different than someone that, you know, wants to, like, work at a hookah bar doing, like, Egyptian cabaret, you know. It's just going to be a completely different look. Although, you know, it's not saying it's a faux pas to do that, but, you kind of want to go for the little niche market that you're aiming at, I would think.
That's really good advice. Some of the best business advice that I ever got was to know who your audience is and talk directly to them. And so I actually have totally different websites for the things that are for other dancers versus my local classes, and it makes things so much easier.
Yeah,
so I love the idea of having different photos.
Yeah, and there, you can do more than one look in a session. I've done that a lot, and it depends who you're photographing with and how comfortable you are in front of the camera. If you're comfy and you know you can take good pictures, which I really think everybody can be, comfortable and learn it. I really believe it's a learned skill. Then you could definitely, go through a few different looks and get usable photos out of all of them in the course of one photo session.
Now, it's important that you mentioned comfort, because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is that there are a lot of dancers who are just supremely comfortable on the stage, but when you bring the camera into play, they just stiffen up. And, why do you think that happens?
I think that happens because I think a lot of people are used to getting, when they're on stage, they get immediate feedback on what they're doing, like the audience gasps when they come on stage, or they burst into applause when they do some crazy, awesome trick or a split or, some series of turns. And we don't have that in front of the camera. It's kind of, for most people, I think, staring into a void, like you just feel like, but you're not staring into the same kind of void as when you're lip syncing into your hairbrush in the bathroom, like
there are consequences.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't take the time to get to know the photographer that they're going to be working with, and that's kind of like a blind date, like you don't know, maybe you haven't done enough research to know exactly what the person's photos look like, or you picked someone that only does headshots and doesn't do shots that are, okay for promotion but a little bit more arty, or maybe you haven't chatted with the photographer and discussed, what props you're going to use. I think all of that pre-photo session work is really important to know that you're going to feel comfortable in front of the camera. And then I also think that you should spend some time playing around in front of your own mirror, and it could be, you could just get one of those cheap, doorway mirrors, those that you can get at Target or Walmart or something, and then just practice doing your poses into the mirror and see what angles look good on you, see what would happen if you hold up the skirt of a costume or if you drape a veil a certain way. You can also maybe set up your camera to do remote selfies and just see what they come out like. So I would recommend practicing like that before you spend the money on a professional photo session. And with that being said, you should always try to get the best photos that you can afford. So in many cases, cheaper is not better, you really want to make sure you're working with a photographer whose work that you admire.
Absolutely.
Okay, I thought I lost you for a second. Sorry.
No, I'm just listening rapidly.
So the other thing, there's some exercises that you can do to relax a little bit in front of the camera. A lot of people hold tension around their mouth and in their jawline, so you can. I'll do one of these things on the phone. It's going to sound insane, though. You guys are going to think I sound like Mr. Ed or Francis the Talking Mule or something. But this is on my DVD where I felt free to make an idiot of myself because it was my DVD. But since you can't see what I'm doing, it might sound crazy. So if you're holding tension in your mouth, this is a little thing that actors do before they go on stage. They kind of just shake their head a little bit back and forth and just go, just blow a raspberry, or, just sort of do some big yawns, roll your head and neck around and just, just make sort of those same kind of cartoon noises that the Roadrunner made when it was escaping from the coyote. Transformed into the physical aspect. Okay, now you guys think I'm nuts. I'm sorry, I am crazy. I'm a crazy princess.
No, you might be, but that is so useful. I make my students do it in the warm-up before class.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like a warm-up. It's a warm-up. I also, in class, not necessarily in photo posing class, but even in regular class, when we're concentrating, we hold tension in the mouth and jaw and in the shoulders. So that causes the shoulders to rise up, and it causes like your jaw to set, and it, you know, that makes your neck look sort of scary and tendony, and it can create lines around your mouth, and you really don't want to document that stuff on camera. And sometimes the photographer is so focused, no pun intended, on you know, just getting like the light readings right and making sure that you're framed properly, that they're not noticing that your mouth is holding tension. Another thing that you can do is after you've had like a few shots taken, like after the photographer has set his or her lights, and you've done a few test shots, just have the photographer show them to you so you can see, like, if you need to turn your hips one way a little more, or if it looks like your shoulders are up too high, or, you know, if your eyes are going in two different directions or whatever. You can kind of like then correct it. You know, you should have a little discussion with the photographer. What could make this photo better? Like if you're not fully confident at that point, you know, because then when you're both analyzing the image, it'll be really clear.
Gotcha. Now, you know, when it comes to photos, I've noticed that the angle makes a really big difference. So how do you find the most flattering angle for your face?
Yes, it makes a huge difference. It's the biggest difference ever. Okay, I'm going to tell you the one picture that I saw that I was really compelled by back in the days when I was looking at Jean Harlow and Greta Garbo photos was a picture of Susan Day from the Partridge Family. And she was completely smiling, and it was in like Tiger Beat or some crazy like teenage magazine. But she looked so beautiful, and I couldn't figure out why it was so beautiful. Her face just had this luscious curve to it, and I actually showed it to my mom, and I said, how come she looks like that when she smiles and I don't? And she said, when you're looking in the mirror, you're looking straight on, and her face is turned 3/4 to the camera. So a 3/4 angle is flattering for like every face, because it will bring your bone structure forward, it will accent your cheekbones, it will make your jaw bone look wider, it'll make your eyes look nice, and you can see both of them. And how you do a 3/4 angle is, if you're staring like directly into the lens of the camera, just cock your head a little bit to the left or the right, you know, turn your head just a little bit away from it, and then turn your eyes directly into the camera lens. And that'll already give you a nice line. If you smile, then with it, what it's going to do is accent the cheekbones on the outer edge of your face. The cheekbone will come forward, and then it'll curve in under the actual plane of the cheekbone, and then your jawline will come forward because you're smiling. It's a really nice angle for anyone. It gives almost everybody cheekbones. And if you're doing that and you stick your head out a little, slide it forward, kind of like a turtle, it's going to feel crazy, and you're going to feel like a nut doing it, but that will cut your jawline even more. It's going to give you a more definite shadow under the jawline. So 3/4, and then jut the whole head forward a little bit like a turtle. And if you want to, when we're done with this call, take a piece of paper or a book and hold it up to one half of your face and look at it on each side, because most people have a better side of the face. There's very few faces that are absolutely 100% symmetrical. So, you know, just pick whatever you decide is your better side. This is an exercise I do in my live classes. Like I have people do it, and if they can't tell, I have them partner up with people. And if still nobody can tell, that means either their face is totally symmetrical and they should be a model, or then I'll just tell them which side is better because I'm the boss. No.
And obviously in a photo shoot, you have control over which side you get to show, whereas when you're dancing, you want balance.
Yeah, when you're dancing, you want balance, but still, even when you're on stage, if the audience is in front of you, you could present your whole body at a 3/4 angle, and that's something you can do in a static photo as well. So the 3/4 angle for full body is kind of like the pose that you see everyone, all the starlets doing on the red carpet at like the Golden Globes or the Oscars or, you know, whatever, the MTV Awards, whatever, like whenever because they're coached to do that. And how you do that is if you're standing straight on facing your photographer, what you want to do is angle your feet and hips at a 45-degree angle away from the camera. Bring your right or left foot, whatever's closer to the camera, in front of the other one. Then you want to twist your upper torso towards the camera and put your head in that three-quarter angle with the jawline a little bit forward, the whole head coming forward. And that's the pose you'll see on the red carpet constantly. And if you don't believe me, after you're done playing with your paper in the mirror, like go to a newsstand and look at a tabloid, and you'll see, like, that's just a classic. It's a classic body line that looks good on everyone. It nips the waist, it elongates the torso, it makes the hip jut out in a pleasing manner. It just looks good on everybody. Another thing that looks great on belly dancers that most belly dancers don't understand is when you're doing that exact same pose, if you drop the hip that's closest to the camera, it's going to add at least 6 inches to your torso. Any kind of up hip motion in a photograph is going to create rolls, which we all love in belly dancing because they're juicy and jiggly and amazing in motion, and they're beautiful and feminine. But for for a static picture, you might not want it. You might feel like it makes you look a little heavier than you want. So if you drop that hip, it's going to completely elongate your torso. That's like magic. It's like all of a sudden you just had it photoshopped and you don't have to.
Interesting. I have to try that next time.
Yeah, try it.
The crazy thing is I'm sitting here in front of my studio mirrors, and I'm so tempted to just get up and walk over there and try all this stuff.
I did just walk over to my mirror. I'm not sick of it. I still like the way it looks.
That's right. Now, I just want to clarify one thing about the full body three-quarter pose, because since we don't have pictures, I want to make sure that I understood that right.
Okay.
So when you're doing the full body three-quarter, then your feet and hips are at a 45-degree angle.
Yes, away from the camera.
Your shoulders are straight onto the camera.
Yes.
Your head is at the same 45-degree angle, so your head is pointing in the same direction as your feet.
It can either be the same direction of your feet or the direction away from it. It doesn't matter, whichever your angle looks better. Gotcha.
So shoulders and eyes are straightforward. Feet, hips, and head are at an angle.
Yes, and it's I used to call it walk like an Egyptian, because that's not like the song, but like the hieroglyphics and the tomb paintings. Because if you look at those, their feet are facing one way, and their chests and shoulders are flat to the viewer.
Gotcha.
See, this is something that's thousands of years old. No. Another nice thing to do in belly dance pictures is to use opposition, because that'll add like a diagonal interest to the photo as well as an up and down interest. So a good example, a good, easy, and belly dancey looking example of opposition is also the same as you would do for almost a cheesecake or pinup photo. It's to have one hand sort of on your head or behind your head with the elbow and arm flat to the camera and the other hand on your hip or near your hip. So it creates like sort of a zigzag pattern, like into the lens of the camera or on the photo as you see it. So you would use...
When you say flat to the camera, you mean straight on, so not twisted away?
No, I mean twisted away, but like instead of just having your arms out and down or by your sides, you could pick one up and, put it lightly on your head, sort of in like a little Saidi or, belly dancing thing, or just behind your ear kind of in your hair, and then the other one is bent at exactly the same angle, but either touching your hip or framing your hip on the opposite side.
Gotcha. I think I cut you off when you were starting another thought.
Oh, that's okay. I drank a lot of coffee. I'm talking a lot now.
So you were talking about opposition. Did you have any other examples of opposition that you wanted to share, or was that the one?
Well, another example would be like doing a full-body Arabesque, and you would do that almost the same way if you started out facing the camera, like just flat forward. You could take your right or your left leg, step out to the side, and then twist your hips so that your hips are going exactly to the side. Then pick up the arm on the same side that you just stepped out to. Like if you stepped out to the left, you'd pick up the left arm and you would extend your foot in an arabesque on the right side, but your foot would be touching the floor. You can use a turnout or not. You want to keep your hips facing the lifted arm, then twist your torso towards the camera. Make sure your shoulders are lowered, and then make sure that your arm on the side of the leg that's doing the arabesque is like exactly following the same leg line. So that gives a really nice long full body zigzag, and it's not as angular as the sort of pinup girl looking one. This one goes from the top corner of the photo to the opposite bottom corner.
Gotcha. So you've got one big long diagonal from the extended arm to the extended foot.
Yeah, and that also looks really nice with a veil behind you, too.
Cool. Do you have anything else you want to share with us about body lines, or can I ask you more questions?
You can ask me more questions.
All right. So on your DVD, Strike a Pose, you shared this sneaky trick that makes your arms look more toned in your photo. Can you share that with us?
Yes, I will share that. I have really big arms. They're nice and big and muscly. But when I let my arm down into a belly dance position that looks nice on stage, I get a little bit of the wings look, or someone told me they called it Hiya Betty, like the slack skin on the bottom side of your arm. So I was trying to figure out how to correct that or make it look better and more cut, and what I discovered would be you let your arm relax, but then tilt your elbow up towards the back of the room, and it immediately sort of lengthens and tones your arm. And then if you flex your pec, it creates a big, deep, muscly-looking shadow in your armpit. And I've actually had an armpit discussion with 3 different photographers. This is going to sound crazy, but that's always an area that's like sort of a quote problem area for photographers, because some people with slightly darker skin sometimes have darker armpits, and sometimes our costumes push our boobies up so high up that, if you're not moving all the time with your arms up, it creates like little weird bulges or folds or wrinkles under there. And, sometimes just the subject of the photograph, will be, there's not a deep armpit. The arm will be sort of plastered to the side or out, but not separated from the body, so it creates more things. So a lot of photographers consider that a problem area in a photograph, not in real life, because they just have to do extra retouching or photoshopping work at the end to make it look as pretty as the rest of the image. It's just like one of those things. It's something that we would never think about because we're not photographers. But this started with one photographer commented to me, "You always have the most beautiful armpits in your pictures." And I was thinking, what? Does he have a fetish about armpits? And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, they're just like, they look deep, and you can see like all the beautiful muscles in your arms and all that. And I said, oh, this is what they look like when I hold my arm out. And I showed him, and he had this mystified look on his face. And I said, here's what I do. And then he said, oh, my God, I'm going to show that to all of my, anyone that I'm photographing now. It doesn't matter, not belly dancers, like anyone that's just doing, he said, that's amazing. He thought that was amazing in the same way that I think, like, someone being able to operate a Photoshop program is amazing. But then I talked about it with some other photographers, and they thought it was, like, really, really cool, too. And as soon as they said, like, what do you think of, like, is it weird to work with armpits, or what's the weirdest part of the photo? And armpits always came up. I know it sounds wild, but, yeah, that's something that, like, I think all glamour shot, photographers or people that are, taking costumed photos or something, I think they're all sort of weird about that area, not in a fetishy way, just in an artistic way or workload way.
Gotcha. Now, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see dancers making when they pose for photos?
The most common mistake is not using your full dance posture. And the other mistake is not relaxing. So when I say not using your full dance posture, like you could be like lifted from the rib cage with the shoulders back and down and tucked and elongated through the torso. And for some reason, a lot of people forget that. I'm really critical of photos, like, you know, especially now on Facebook, there's photos all over the place. I look through them and sometimes and just go, oh, my God, that's stunning. Or, oh, that poor girl, why did she post that? Or, you know, I just look at them, not judging the people, but just judging, like, the photograph itself. And I've noticed that a lot of people don't like, pull up and elongate as much as they do on stage in a photo. And then, you know, the other one is, like I said, just being nervous or scared, which you often see, like, tension mouth lines. And I think the third mistake is going up hip because it looks belly dancey, when down hip would actually just give a more universally flattering angle.
Gotcha. This has been really helpful so far. But before we get into the posing critiques, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners? Anything that you think that they really need to know before you send them back into the world?
Yeah. If you guys can't afford, like, a professional photographer or right away, I would advise you to contact, like, some photography or art schools in your vicinity, and they're almost everywhere, you know, and if there's not one that's particularly, you know, dedicated to that, then you might want to just try a university, because there will be some kind of a art or photography department. You can always, you know, contact professors or go and put up an ad on the bulletin board or something there, because photography students have access to, like, the best equipment and usually studios, and they always need photos, you know, for their graded assignments. I've gotten a lot of great photographs by doing that for like nothing or nearly nothing. So that's really something to consider. The other thing you should try to do is really, like, when you're working with that photographer, whether it's a professional or a student, definitely look at your photos, and if the photo light or something seems kind of harsh, ask them if they can play around with it a little bit, you know. A lot of people think that just the brighter the light, the better, but they don't think about the placement of the light, and the light placement is hugely important. Like, good lighting with adequate, like, illumination, and placement can either make you look really old and haggard or make you look like the first breath of spring, you know? Like, it's good lighting is crucial, and a lot of photographers are really good at composition but not that great at lighting. So don't be shy about, you know, just asking in the middle of a photo session or mentioning ideas that you have beforehand, and even sending, like, JPEGs of, you know, techniques that you like, or you know, photos that speak to you, to the photographer. Like, don't ever be shy about speaking up, because it's your photos that you're paying for. The photographer might have the equipment, but ultimately you're in charge because you're hiring them. I don't mean be rude, but just, you know, don't be afraid about saying, oh, you know, that lighting looks a little bit dark. Can we change it? Or something like that.
That's really good advice. Awesome.
Thank you.
I think I'd like to jump straight into our posing critiques. So for those of you who are listening, remember that we are going to be working with some visuals here. So if you want to get onto the webcast, you'll be able to see those online. Or if not, you can download the slides at bellydancegeek.com/clubhouse and just click on the big gray download button. So I am going to take us into our first photo. And this is a photo of Treasure Marshall from Texas. And this photo is by Kevin Schuster from Schuster Studios. And I believe that they're both live on the call. So if you two are interested, you can press *2 to raise your hand, and I'll be happy to unmute you in case you have any questions. But otherwise, I'm going to hand that straight off to Her Highness. So do you have any suggestions that you'd like to give Treasure?
Yes, and I love your name, Treasure. It's awesome. Okay, so I can see that you're trying to get like a beautiful, contemplative, and sort of dreamy quality to this photograph. The first thing that I notice about it is that I don't think that you look completely comfortable here. I can see tension around your mouth, and you're not pulling up into a beautiful dance pose the way that I was just discussing. Like, your neck looks a little bit short because your shoulders are sort of up and tense, and you're not your torso would need to be like a little bit more angled to the side to elongate it. That being said, I like the fact that the hair matches the background. That's really interesting and cool, but it might also look cool if Kevin's on the line, the photographer, or maybe Treasure could just suggest it. I think because she's got such an awesome auburn color of hair, it might look cool if you could change the color of the background. And you got to just bear with me, because when I talk about making Photoshop changes, I'm not a technician, so I don't know if what I'm telling you to do could take 10 minutes or 10 hours. If it takes 10 hours, it's not worth it. But if the background was like the spectral opposite of her hair, which is sort of orangey, so if it was a light turquoise or something, it would really make her hair pop. It would look really beautiful, you know. It does look beautiful now, but it would put the focus more on her than the actual russety and brown tones of the whole photograph. Also, Kevin, I don't know if you used one of those light, I don't know what the technical name is, those round circles that are gold or silver that bounce light on it, but it looks like she needs a little bit more light on her face, because that would make there's a little fleck of light on her chin, and the right side of the face, which is actually the left side as you're looking at the photograph, is a lot darker than her actual left side or photo right. Like her face could just be evened out a little more. So, Treasure, you were first, and I just got to tell you, I meant to say this before. I'm not trying to sound too mean in front of everybody. This is just what I see, because I analyze photographs all the time. That being said, I do love the dreamy quality of it, and I wish I had your hair. Your hair is amazing. Okay, shall we move on? Or does anyone have a question?
Okay, well, I know that Treasure has dropped off the call. Unfortunately, we missed her, but I know she's going to be listening to the recording later if she can't get back on. But if anybody else who's on the call has a question specifically about Treasure's feedback, you can press *2 if you're on the phone or Skype, or if you're on the webcast, you can type in a question using the box at left. And I'm actually checking out the questions, and I actually noticed more of a comment. This is from Teslin in Germantown, and she says this is more of a comment than a question. And she says that Princess Farhana's gallery on her webpage shows some great examples of poses and techniques mentioned. So that would be a great choice. That's princessfarhana.com. And those of you who are on the webcast, you'll actually find those links on the left-hand side of the screen where it says Princess Farhana. That will take you directly to her website.
Thank you. There's a lot on Facebook. There's tons that are both like studio photos and just messing around party photos. But I've learned to like just do that in a Pavlovian way now, whenever.
Oh, okay. And actually, it looks like we've got Kevin back up. So, Kevin, I'm going to unmute you for a second and ask you if you have any questions.
Thank you. There's a lot on Facebook. There's tons that are both like studio photos and just messing around party photos. But I've learned to like just do that in a Pavlovian way.
We're trying to figure out how to.
And actually, it looks like we've got Kevin back up. So, okay. So it looks like we're getting just a little bit of feedback on Kevin's line. So I'm actually just going to mute you again. And Kevin, if I could have you just mute your computer sound or pop in some headphones, that might work.
We had Skype on, and then we had the web on, trying to look at what you were looking at. So I've turned the web off, and we're on Skype now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly too.
Great. Okay, we're both here.
All right. So I'm not sure if you caught the princess's suggestions, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Well, we were trying to connect at the same time, and we were getting that issue. No, we heard, and we were listening.
Okay. I agree with you about the tension in my face and on the posing and all that. Kevin has spoken to me about that, and I'm working on it. I have a lot of trouble looking directly into the camera. I don't really know why. I realize that I fully need to work on being more comfortable, and the idea of pulling up and all that. That's probably nerves.
Yeah, it's part of the same thing. No, I get it. I totally understand. But do you guys work together a lot, or are you like together as a couple, or?
No, we are working on some projects together. When I went looking for a dance photographer, this gentleman's name is the one that came up over and over and over. So I have had several sessions with him, and we're currently working on a couple of projects together. So the photo that you're viewing is a photo that we're working on for a skirt work project.
Cool. I could tell from the way that is something that I didn't mention, but that was a good example of what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast. Like the photo should sort of represent what you're focusing on, and I totally got the skirt work thing.
Right. And we were also testing the back.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So I think for what we're shooting for, it will work. Of course, you always want to get better and better. I do think it's a usable photo, though, don't you?
I think it's a usable photo, totally. And it's a learning curve for everybody. You, the photographer. Rome wasn't built in a day. And even though photos go snap, 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 just learning how to do them and feeling comfortable doing them takes a little time.
Great.
Your skin looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know. Do you have any questions for me? I can tell the shadow on her face is actually from her hair.
Yeah.
I have... in this photo, I'm working with three lights. The strongest, which is the right, which is actually window light.
Oh, it's natural light?
Yes.
Mhm.
And with some fill, with some artificial light. This is actually, Treasure was dancing at the time.
Oh, she was actually moving, yeah.
Yeah, she was actually moving. I find that I've been photographing dancers for years now, and I find that actually they're more comfortable in their element and when they can move.
I agree with you on that, but the thing that happens if they don't practice at home, and that everyone can hear this, right, Nadira?
Yep.
Okay. The thing that happens, that is definitely true, that dancers are more comfortable when they can move, or when they're doing some beautiful veil pose or doing dancing, but sometimes they forget that they're taking a photograph, which is good because it makes them feel at ease, but unless the photographer is really right on it or taking hundreds of pictures, often they forget that their body lines need to be presented right to the camera, and something like a veil getting lifted will take precedence over the line of the torso, or I'm not saying that about this camera, but I'm just making that as a point in general, so then the photograph becomes more about the veil than it does about the woman that's manipulating it. I've just seen that a lot.
I understand.
Yeah, I knew you would.
I'm a photographer for the ballet company here. And,
awesome.
And so, yes, I understand that completely.
Yeah, that's something that, we just get lost dancing no matter what kind of dance we're doing. We should probably move on to who's next?
Great. Thank you for your input.
Thank you to Basma.
Thank you, Treasure and Kevin. I know that submitting those is not always comfortable, and I'm so glad that you did it because that was really helpful for me, too.
Yay.
Okay. So let's move on. We've got a photo here from Bosma in Birmingham, Alabama. And this photo here is by Deloy Burl.
And are you presenting both photos, the one with the red veil?
I'm showing the first one first, which is the standing pose without the veil.
Okay.
And then we'll do the veil one next.
Okay, the standing pose without the veil is my favorite of the two, and you guys will see. You'll see it, I think, when the other one comes up. Her face is so beautiful and gorgeous and engaging here. She's activating her dimple because she's smiling naturally. She's looking right into the camera. She looks really beautiful and really personable. The things that I don't like about this photograph is it looks like that her belly has been kind of maybe too photoshopped, and it looks like her belly button is just sort of airbrushed almost away, and that just looks a little bit odd to me. There's also like weird shadows on it. I think it would have been better if just the skin tone was evened out. But again, I don't do Photoshop, so I don't know if that takes 5 minutes or 5 hours. But as a subject, she just looks really gorgeous in that picture. Let's go on to the red veil picture next.
Okay, we are on to the red veil photo.
Okay, so you guys see that picture? She looks a little bit tentative in the face. She's not smiling as much as she was in the other one, but it's not a definite expression. You know, it could be sort of like she was about to smile, but it's not arranged to be like a contemplative looking shot or a sexy shot or I like how she used the veil across her body. That looks really beautiful. I love that. That's a beautiful frame, and it adds like the diagonal zigzag onto it. The thing that I don't like about this picture is the odd shadows on her stomach, which, again, I think that comes from lighting, and I don't know if it's a natural source, but it looks like there's stripy, like blobby shadows on her torso on the right side of the photo, the part that's not covered with the veil. And I think that could, if that was cleaned up a little bit, that would make the picture better. But if I had to choose just for my taste between those pictures, I would definitely pick the one where she looks so alive with the green background.
Mm-hmm. All right. Bosma, if you're listening on the call, you can press *2 on the phone or Skype keypad to raise your hand if you have any questions. Or if you're on the webcast, you can type those in at left. I know that there is a delay of 15 or maybe even 30 seconds on the webcast, so we may not get an answer immediately.
Okay. Well, we can talk about the one of Sekhmet now unless she raises her hand.
Great, let's go ahead and do that. So let's go on to Sekhmet's photo. All right, and that should be on.
This picture is very, very close to perfect. The only thing that I would suggest would be if the background could get lightened up a little bit or her hair be given a little more definition because her hair kind of fades into the background. In some ways that's cool, like as an art shot or, like a fine art looking shot. But she might not want, you want to kind of see what her hair is doing, I think, and I have that problem a lot because I have dark hair. So if you're posing with a dark background, there needs to be contrast between your hair and the background. Otherwise, you look like kind of a disembodied head or a Phantom of the Opera mask or something, But here, she's using opposition. The veil is in a great position, but it's not compromising her body position. She's holding her left arm, which is at the right side of the frame, in a really nice arc. Her waist looks beautiful. She's got one foot in front of the other. She's focused up on the veil. It's just a really, really striking photograph.
Excellent. Okay. Sekhmet, if you're on the call, you can press *2 to raise your hand, or if you're on the webcast, you can type that in. And in the meantime, Bosma did have a response, so I'm going to go back to her slide for a second.
Okay.
And then Bosma says, "Hi, I'm here on the webcast. I'm wearing a belly cover. Do you think that's affecting the shadows?"
You know, it really might be because belly covers. Yeah, I think that is. I don't know if she's got one of the ones that's power net or lighter material. The power net ones often make weird shadows and sort of like stroby fishnet looking pictures, and that might have been also what obscured her belly button there. It's I was only mentioning the belly button because if it looked a little more like actual human belly button, I think it would be like a really great shot. And also, Basma, I would kill to have your dimples. They're awesome.
Awesome. Okay. So I don't know if Basma has any more questions or comments, but we're waiting. In the meantime, she said that it's PowerNet. So that could
okay, that's why. She might want to try, if the PowerNet isn't sewn, like just the next time she does photos, if it's not sewn into the costume, try some with and some without, because there's like little filters that can be put on a camera, put on the actual photo, when it's getting finished, like after the image is already made, they can make they can put a little filter on it that'll smooth out your skin the same way as a power net would, but without like obscuring details,
Gotcha. Okay.
It just smooths everything out, a little bit. Okay,
exactly.
So should we go to Irina?
Actually, we do have a comment from Sekhmet.
Oh,
so I'm going to go back to her photo for the webcast. And she says that she thought this looked like a Caravaggio with dramatic shadows.
It does. It's amazing. It's such a beautiful photograph.
Yeah. And if I can add my own comment, I also have dark hair, and I like black backgrounds. And one thing that photographers have always done for me is to use a backlight.
Yes, I was going to say
on my head from
backlighting.
behind or from the top.
Yeah.
And that just creates that little kind of halo at the top of my hair that makes it stick out from the backdrop.
Yes, I have that too. And but I mean the lightning thing can be done even for a live photo too, to make the hair more definite, because whenever there's a black backdrop in the theater, any of us with dark hair will have that same problem most of the time, And I mean, unless the lighting is amazing, which it isn't always, and we don't always get tech checks. But yes, I love this photo. It's really beautiful.
Okay. So let's move on to Irina. I'm not sure if it's Irina or Irina. And this was not a dance photo submission. This is actually a question that she asked me to submit for the question and answer section because she can't attend live. She's actually in Germany today. And so that's kind of like the middle of the night for them.
Yeah.
And so the question that she submitted, which I'm about to read to you, after she sent that in, I actually asked her to send in pictures. So these are some candid shots just to illustrate what she means. So what Irina asked was, my face looks pretty oval-shaped to me when I look in a mirror, and I seem to see cheekbones, but it somehow looks incredibly flat in pictures. Unless I'm offering my profile, it's just one big expanse of face with no definition. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that the skin of my neck curves rather gently from my chin to my neck without too much definition. Again, fine in real life with its typical shadows and angles, but in photos, it looks like I have a double chin. I've tried contouring, but it never seems to make much of a difference, although I still haven't applied drag queen level contouring yet either. So what do I do?
Okay. I have the same type of chin and neck arrangement where it slopes gently, and we would have been considered so beautiful in the times of the Gibson girl around the turn of the century. And Irina is absolutely beautiful. She's right. She does have amazing cheekbones. The first picture, the one with the lace background, is with natural light coming in from a window, obviously, and the lighting is doing nothing for her face. You can see that her face is around the edges, it's getting the light from the window, but the part of the face, the whole center part that you really want to see, is a lot darker. And it's also, it's not accenting anything there. If she had that taken at a different time of day, that photograph would probably look very different. She's got really beautiful bone structure. She's got a nice full mouth, and she's got really large eyes and great eyebrows. even to make this picture in the window with the lace background a little better, she could use that same trick, the jutting your head forward like a turtle, and it would immediately erase the gentle slope and create a bigger jawline. That's why I like that one a lot, because I don't have a very defined jawline myself. And the other picture takes the cake. No. The other picture is straight on. If she used that 3/4 angle that I was talking about, you would see her cheekbones. You can still see it on the right side of the photo or the left side of her face there a lot. Sometimes we're our own harshest critics. We can tell you have really good cheekbones, Irina, for sure. Now, as for the contouring for photos and for on stage is different than contouring for real life. So you don't have to use drag queen level contouring unless you're on a big stage from far away. But what you want to do with contouring, and it looks like you're not wearing any makeup at all here, so I got to commend you on your beautiful skin. What you want to do for contouring is get a contour color that's sort of taupe and not shiny. The reason why anything that's pearlescent or shiny will reflect light, and what you want to do is use like a matte or flat colored kind of contour color in a shade that's a few shades darker than your natural skin tone. So it's almost like a dark grayed taupe, but matte, because what that will do is it will absorb light and it will make the cheekbones stand out more. You want to blend that really well, but the thing that would help it even more would be to put a very light hand touch application of pearly, sort of oyster colored or maybe baby pink colored pearly highlighter, and you can even use a regular eyeshadow for that. It doesn't have to be a product called highlighter, on the top of your cheekbone. And what you do is stick 2 fingers into the temples on each side of your head and find out where the cheekbone is, and it usually starts like midway down your ear, and you can feel that whole cheekbone. On that line that you felt, that's where you want to dab on the contour. I mean, not the contour, the highlight shade, because that will bring the cheekbone forward like nobody's business. I always use that on stage and for photos, especially studio photos where there's hot lights. It'll reflect the light and just bring the cheekbone out. It's a really good trick. And on a stage, you might want to use it with a lot heavier hand than you would in photos. But it'll really make the part of your face that's under the cheekbone look receded.
Those are great tips. Do you have anything else that you want to share with Irina?
My cat always takes perfect pictures because he's not self-conscious of the camera. Although I don't think any of the Geek Club's girls would look good yawning and stretching in a photo the way he does. I think you just experiment with your makeup. It's temporary. You're not making a big commitment, so just play around with that and just try to have fun in front of the camera. Remember to breathe. And the poses that I've talked about here and also on my Strike a Pose DVD will tire you out and, make you feel really like you've been dancing for hours after you've done a photo session. But seriously, that's why models get paid so much. It's not easy to hold poses for a long time. The other thing I want to tell you is if you girls are using props, balanced props, like a sword or a pot or a tray, do your photos holding the props, like maybe the sword over your head or a tray in your hand, sort of tilted towards the camera, as opposed to on your head until the very last few shots. The reason why is that when we're balancing, especially when we're holding still for a photo and not in motion, it creates so much tension in the neck and the shoulders because of the weight and because of the stillness that it's very hard to get really nice pictures with a balanced prop on your head, And if the photographer is shooting from above you, then you're only going to be able to raise your eyes up. You can't move your head up the way you would if you didn't have something balanced on it, so that angle is not going to do you any good. And if they shoot from below, it's going to look scary. So when you're using props like that, it's probably better to balance like a sword on your wrist as opposed to your head or on the shoulder or, you know, like I said, holding a jug up against your shoulder or a tray tilted a little bit towards the camera. So I forgot to say that earlier. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I cannot believe it. We're almost at 10 after the hour. So I think I'm going to go ahead and open us up for the question and answer time.
Okay, I have a gig coming up too, so I got to get rolling pretty soon. Sorry.
Okay, well, you can cut us off whenever you need to. But
okay.
So for those of you who want to ask questions, if you're on the phone or on Skype, you can press *2 to raise your hand. And if you're on Skype, remember that that's *2 on your Skype keypad, not *2 on your keyboard. And also, those of you who are on the webcast, you can just type your questions in the box at left. And before we actually start taking questions, I'd just like to ask the princess, so if people want to learn more from you, how can they do that? We've gotten this great taste, but there's so much more.
I have a blog that the address is princessraqs.blogspot.com that has all sorts of tips about dancing and photo posing and makeup and, you know, being a professional on it. They can read there. There's a huge archive. And that blog actually was started in 2009. So I would be forced to write my book, the Belly Dance Handbook, which is coming out in November of this year, and I'm really excited. And I got to say, I look great on the cover because I know how to pose for photos. No. Also on my website, princessfarhana.com, there in the workshops and events section, there's a listing of everything I'm doing from right now until, you know, the 2014 dates that are already solid. So maybe I'm coming to a place near you guys. And you can always write to me on my Facebook page, and I love to answer questions for people. And that's one of the things I do when I'm touring around. I sit at the airport and, like, respond back to emails I get asking questions. I really love to do that. I feel like the Ann Landers of belly dance. So there you go. And also, awesome. I forgot my DVD, Strike a Pose, How to Make the Camera Love You, is available from princessfarhana.com. Go to the videos page. It says videos, not DVDs, because the guy that built my website made that front page not changeable, and I will be having a new website soon. But that's why it says videos. That's how long that front page has been in place, and it's about time we changed it.
Excellent. All right. And speaking of that DVD, I understand that you have a little present for some of our listeners.
I do. We're going to be giving away 2 copies of Strike a Pose. So I don't know how you're going to do that, Nadira, but Nadira's in charge of it, and she's going to get me whoever wins the copies of the DVD's addresses. So I will be sending them out to you, and if you want me to sign it to you, I would love to.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so here's how the giveaway is going to work. So we have 2 copies for the people who are attending live, whether that's on the phone, on the Skype, or webcast. And so if you're on the phone or Skype, I can already see you at my little dashboard here. But if you're on the webcast and you want to be included in the drawing, I need you to type your name in that box on the left so that I can include you in the drawing. So just make sure your name is in there, and you can type in Enter Me or anything else that you want. Just make sure that you do that. And we'll pick the drawing at the end of the questions, so you have a few minutes to get that in. All right, so while we're waiting, we have a caller from a number that's showing up as coming from Toronto. You are now unmuted.
Hello.
Hi, Princess Farhana and Nadira. This is Kalina. I'm from Toronto, and my question is that I have a professional photo shoot coming up in September. It's going to be my first one, and I was just wondering how many costume changes are realistic for a 2-hour time slot.
If it's your first professional photo session, I would say 2.
Just two? Okay.
Well, I mean, bring another one because you might have like a super great rapport with the photographer, or you might just be a natural at taking pictures, you know, but also make sure that the photographer thinks it's okay. I know that there's some photographers that charge you by the costume change. I know of a couple of them out here in Los Angeles, so I don't know if that's the case with you. But
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, if it's not an issue, then just bring more than you need of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you another trick to do if you are getting through multi-costume changes. Plan your costumes and your makeup so that your makeup goes from lightest to darker, so it looks like you did photos on different days, like use different accessories and change out your lipstick color. Like if you have one costume where you're going to use like a pale pink on your lips and the next one is like a really dramatic darker look, do that look second. So then you can when you're powdering anyway because you're going to get hot from the lights, then before you change, you can change out your lipstick and it'll just give it a whole different feel.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, and thank you for asking. Okay, if there's anybody else on the phone or Skype who wants to ask a question, you can press *2 to raise your hand. We do have a couple of questions on the webcast, so let me scroll down to where those were. Okay, so Candace in Auckland, New Zealand, who I talked to yesterday. Hi, Candace. She says, hi, Nadira and Princess Farhana. Do you have any suggestions for posing or performing for video and TV recordings? Can I apply your techniques from photography to film? Specifically, should I be looking at the camera the same way, smile a lot or not too much, dance posture, or more relaxed?
I would say definitely don't only look into the camera, but look into it as though it's a friend of yours or a very close audience member. That always gives it a more natural and connected feeling to the audience. If you look into it, it's like looking into someone's eyes. So the same as if you're performing. If you would look directly at someone, that's what it's going to feel like to anyone that's viewing the video that you're doing. Definitely use all your dance posture. You really want to look pulled up and elongated on film because film and video adds pounds. It really does. So you want to make sure that you're really conscious of your body lines and angles. And also on film, like moving film, like video, I like to use body glitter. I don't use too much on my face because sometimes it looks like there's glitches in the film, but it looks nice on your body. And when I'm doing regular photo sessions, I never use glitter until the very last few shots in front of the camera for the same reason. I usually just like it for close-ups. So, if the person that's filming your DVD is editing in any tight shots, maybe they can take some that are very tight on you towards the end with glitter on around your eyes or on your face if you want to use it. But otherwise, I'd say go without it. And can't wait to see it. Hope you post it on Facebook.
Excellent. Great question, Candace. If you do have any follow-up questions, you can go ahead and type those in at the box at left. Again, people who are on phone or Skype, press *2 to raise your hand. And again, webcast folks, don't forget to type in that you want to be included in the drawing. All right, we've got one more question in the webcast. So Kesslin from Germantown says, belly dancing has really improved my posture, but I still have shoulders that roll forward. Any posture tips?
When you're standing in belly dance posture, try to squeeze your shoulder blades a little bit closer together without straining, like without causing yourself pulled muscles. I always like to think of the lift in my upper body coming from the sternum or like right under my cleavage. And so if you feel like you're connected on a little gossamer string up to the ceiling or the clouds, if you will, and it's coming from there, then your shoulders will naturally sort of relax back without having to be held down in that position.
Gotcha. Good tip. Okay. Let's see if we've got any other questions. Again, phone and Skype people, press *2. Webcast folks, just go ahead and type in your question. Also, we have a comment from Meredith in Eugene, who, when entering for the thing, said thank you for a wonderful episode, which is awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Okay. So I'm going to give every. Oh, we've got a hand raised, and that is Candace. We've got her on Skype. Hi, Candace.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Thank you so much for the advice on using the same techniques on film. The main thing that I find quite difficult was, we've myself and my troupe have been interviewed a couple of times for TV shows or news productions and things like that, and I find when I watch it, I feel really like I'm looking at myself, I look really awkward, or I'm smiling far too much. Like after I say something or while I'm saying something, I just feel like I look really false. I don't know if that's just maybe something to get used to or something that can be practiced as well.
Since I haven't seen it, I can't really comment, but I have to tell you that after making DVDs since like the year 2000 and making different voice recordings since the 80s and acting since that time too, I still look at my recordings and listen to them, and I have no idea what people see in me.
Okay.
So sometimes it's just a matter of like, like you're always going to be your worst critic, and you might think that you look awkward, but someone else thinks you look cute. Like sometimes I watch the way I talk, and I was like, oh my God, I look like a nut, So yeah. I know other professional dancers and actors that feel like that too. So I think that's probably just, part of the deal, no matter who you are. I'm sure Marilyn Monroe felt like that.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thanks, Candace. Okay. If there are any last-minute questions, this is your last call. Press *2 to raise your hand or type it in the question box at left. And again, webcast folks, don't forget that if you want to be entered in the drawing, you've got to type in your name. And while we're waiting for that last round, Your Highness, I'd just like to ask you, if there's one thing that people take away from this call, what would you want it to be?
I think probably just the concept of, that they are beautiful and they can be even more beautiful, and they should just, the camera's their friend, you just have to play around with it and get used to it, and you have to cut yourself a little bit of slack, and pat yourself on the back for being a performer, because most people are scared to even leave voicemails, and here you are performing on stage or about to, doing something you love, and, making beautiful art in the third dimension and in one dimension. So kudos to you.
That's so great. Okay, so it is time for our drawing. So the way that this is going to work is that I counted up the number of people who are on the phone or on Skype, and then I counted up the number of people who entered on the webcast, and we have a total of 10 entries. So I'm going to a website called random.org, which generates true random numbers based on atmospheric noise, for those of you who are that kind of geek. And I'm picking the random number generator. I'm telling it to pick a number from 1 to 10.
This is so geeky. You know that, right?
I know. And it chose number 2, which is our second phone number person, which is 1, 2, the caller from Amherst, Massachusetts. So I'm going to unmute you for a sec. Hi there. What's your name? Hi, do we have you?
I don't hear anybody.
Okay, it's a number that starts with 413. If you're there, say hi.
Hi.
Hi there. What's your name?
My name is Melissa.
Melissa. So you have won one of the free DVDs.
Wow. Sorry, I'm really excited. I just put it on my wish list on Amazon. So.
Awesome. So you are the only person who's called into this entire thing whose name I can't see from my dashboard. So can I ask you to email me your address so we can have the princess send you your DVD?
Sure.
Do you have my email address? I'll give it to you.
Is it oh, never mind. Yeah, can you just hand it to me?
Yep.
Oh, Nadira@NadiraJamal.com.
That's the one. So if you can just email that to me tonight, I'll make sure that Her Highness gets you your DVD.
Yeah. Oh, very
cool.
excited. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have fun with it.
Thanks.
All right. So now we have to pick our second number, so I'm going to do the same thing, 1 to 10. And it gave me 2 again, so let me pick another one. And this time we have number 1, which is Kevin Schuster. So I know that Kevin and Treasure are listening together, so you two get to fight over which of you gets it. But I have Treasure's email address, so I'll ask Treasure to send us the address, and you two can decide who gets the DVD or whether you watch it together.
Okay.
Cool.
That's great.
Excellent. So enjoy. All right. And thank you so much, Your Highness, for coming on the show with us. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Nadira. It's been a pleasure.
Great. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And this is the end of the call, but that doesn't mean that the conversation has to end. So we've got a private Facebook group just for Clubhouse members. If you're not in there already, I'll be sending out an email shortly with an invitation to the link. And those of you who are listening to the recording later on, you can join the Clubhouse to get that invitation at bellydancegeek.com/clubhouse. And when I send out that email, I'll also include a link to the call recording so that you can listen to this later and review some of that information on your own time. I'll also include a link to a survey where I'm going to ask you for your feedback. So I run the Clubhouse, but it doesn't make it mine. It's for all of us. So I really want to know what topics, what speakers you'd like to see, and any other ways that I can improve the Clubhouse. So please do give me your feedback. And our next call is scheduled for Tuesday, September 10th at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. My guest is Alia Thabit, who is going to talk about 3 things that you can put in your dance besides steps.
She's awesome.
I love her. So the last thing that I want to say is that the Clubhouse is the come-on-in kind of Clubhouse, not the no boys allowed kind. So if you know anybody who would enjoy these calls, please invite them to join us. They can do that at bellydancegeek.com/clubhouse. And until next time, happy dancing.
Bye, you guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening. For more geek-tacular resources, visit bellydancegeek.com.